you picture your
Yeah.
friends being friends forever,
Mhm. Right.
right? And
Yeah.
romantic partners, most women will or people will go, well, romantic partners come and go, but friends last a lifetime. And then the more mature you get, you go season, lifetime, reason, because you
Yeah.
recognize
Yeah.
that that hypothesis is not true. Friends are not always a lifetime. They're more seasonal. The more you grow, you realize they're actually more seasonal than they are lifetime.
Welcome to the After Chapter podcast. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Cecilia. We explore who you are when the roles fall away.
And pour into what's next, one conversation at a time.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the After Chapter. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, Cecilia.
So how's it-
you?
I am just so happy that spring is here.
Oh, my God.
That's how I am. Winter,
The worst
was-
winter on the East Coast.
it was winter, then fake winter, and then fake spring, and then sprinter. And so I'm just happy that it's light. It's light at 6:00. That feels amazing. And it is a good time to spend time with your friends. And so
I like how you did that. I like how you did that.
You see what I did? So, and this episode is about friendship. And so what we're going to be talking about, as we have been this entire time, is who are you in spaces and times? And so what we're going to talk about as it relates to the friendship or the friendship audit, as we're calling it, is what happens to our relationships when we change. And so, growth doesn't just shift your career or your goals in your career. Growth shifts conversations. It shifts comfort. It shifts alignment. And so sometimes as there's growth and there's shifting, the people who knew us or know us don't fully recognize who we are becoming at this moment. And that can feel confusing and at times isolating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And so this episode is really for anyone who has looked at their circle and quietly wondered, do these relationships and friendships fit who I am now in this moment?
So this episode, we're going to be unpacking a couple of things. As Cecilia had said, realizing who we are when we've changed. So, and then some of the friendships that we've had, they have not changed. How are your closest relationships shaping? How they're shaping who you are becoming. We're also unpacking the difference between growing up together and growing in the same direction, which is, let that sit for a minute. That is very different. And how do you reevaluate or evaluate the friendships that you have without any blame or any drama?
And, we've all been there. And so I'm, what I realize is that as we've gone through these seasons, the goal is not to remove people from our lives, right? And so it's not to cut people off. It's really to have a moment of clarity. And as I look at the circles that I am a part of, it's important that that community really reflects who I am and who I am growing into, because friendship just doesn't support your identity. It shapes it.
Yeah. So as usual, we have a guest joining us for this particular episode. And joining us today is Sybil Amuti. Is that the correct pronunciation, Sybil? Please tell
Very
me if I'm
good,
wrong.
Michelle. That was perfect. Perfect.
Great. So Sybil is an on-air host, live event MC, and moderator known for commanding rooms and elevating conversations. She has hosted more than 450 podcast episodes and live experiences, including her charting podcast, New Day with Sybil Amuti, which has reached over 2 million downloads and built a 40,000 plus member community. She's led conversations for brands like Essence, Prudential, Walmart, Anscape, Hello Sunshine, and The Today Show, guiding rooms from intimate executive gatherings to festival stages with thousands. Sybil's Sybil brings presence, preparation, and clarity to every space she enters. And today we're excited to talk with her about how friendship evolves when identity shifts.
But
But
before we go deep, we pour. And what a beautiful pour is in my glass. And so
yes,
tell me about that.
of course. So today I chose a mocktail for this conversation. So this is a grapefruit rosemary spritz. So no alcohol, no blur, just clarity. I thought we should be really clear for this conversation.
Okay.
So this is when you're taking a really honest look at your friendships, what fits, what doesn't, what's shifting. You need that clear head and that steady footing. So this spritz, it's bright, a little sharp and grounded. And again, that felt right for this conversation that we are going to have, because the friendship audit, it shouldn't be dramatic. Should be deliberate.
Mhm. Okay. I'm excited to have this drink. I'm always excited.
So with that,
Yeah.
welcome Sybil to
Sybil.
the conversation. Please enter the room, so to speak, and let us know, what are you having?
Thank you so much, ladies. I am so excited to be a guest here on the show. I'm so glad I showed up with the right hair so that I could be in formation.
Yeah.
I showed up with a mocktail as well. It's a very simple, like house-made peach tea. And so it's my own secret formula, but I brew my own amazing Southern sweet tea. I've done it for years. I'm a Southern girl, so this
Love
is
that.
like this is like our water. And and I splashed it with some peach nectar, and it's like one of my favorite. I'm taking today to be like a light, simple, like high-spirited drink that kind of has a soothing comfort as well, because the peach brings a brightness, and then the tea just brings that soothing comfort. So I wanted to match your energy, and I think we may have similar glasses. I'm not quite sure, but
Yes, those
There we go.
the rocks glasses.
rocks,
Yes. So
yes,
cheers.
yes. So-
Cheers to you.
So-
cheers.
Cheers to you, and cheers to you, and cheers to the friends who grow with us, and to the courage to be honest about where we are. Cheers.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Can we also cheers to the ones that have to make exits? You know,
Yes.
we need to cheers to
Yes.
those that make
Cheers
brave
to
exits.
those. Cheers to those as well. It was nice having you for the season.
That's right. That's also friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will jump right in now. And so the question that we are sitting with is, when was the last time, Sybil, you evaluated your friendships? Not because of conflict, but because of growth.
This is going to sound so bizarre, but I will say I evaluate my friendships daily. And I know that seems weird. I know it seems kind of odd. I know it's like, wait, how dare you like evaluate your people and your relationships at such a high frequency? But I do that because every day requires something new, fresh, and different. And I need to make sure that I'm able to meet the demands and the requirements of the day. And that includes the relationships that are meant to serve my life and those that I'm meant to serve. So my audit is daily. I'm constantly checking in.
So, as we talk about those seasons, Sybil, was there a season when you realized that you were changing and some of the friendships no longer fit in the same way?
My God. Yes, 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 and yes. Which season do you want? Do you want when I moved back to New York and my friends from undergrad were all going, "Why would you move back to New York? Like, what are you chasing?" Like when they call, they're like, "Are you dream chasing? Why aren't you just gonna stay in New Orleans and with your career?" Or when I got married and some of the friends just didn't fit in anymore because the married life changed the dynamics, or when I had a kid and I needed mom friends and I needed them desperately. And then when I had adolescents and I needed a different group of mom friends. And then I had teenagers and I needed mentors like you, Ceci. And I was constantly asking questions. And did I dare move to LA after living in New York and New Jersey, the New York, New Jersey area for almost 18 years? We dare move to LA and everyone's going, "Are you okay? Like, what's wrong? Why would you move? You're so, life is good for you here. Where are you going and why?" Right? So that uncertainty and like the orbit changed a bit because you need community everywhere you go and proximity does matter in relationships and the quality of proximity matters even more. So I've had to immerse myself deeper in community here, and that means I don't have time, as much time as I would have had to devote to all of my friendships around the nation or the world because I do have to build new relationships that support where I am in this season. And it keeps oh, and then don't start you start a podcast. What are you start? You're not a anchor, like you're not a news reporter. What are you doing? Like you're not a journalist. How dare you start a podcast? How dare you start a community? How dare you start a conference? And then it keeps going, it's like with every season that I move into, I feel like it's fair for people to evaluate whether or not I belong in their lives. And it's also fair for me to evaluate whether or not they belong in my life. And it's also fair to evaluate the proximity, right? Because the closer people are to you, the more influential they are over your decision making, over your quality of life, your health,
Mhm,
your
mhm.
goals, your ambition. So that evaluation process it happens at every season, but I will say this last one was particularly interesting moving to LA because I've lived in most people's two dream cities, right? Everyone dreams to live in New York. Well, not everyone. Many people dream to live in New York City and they're like, if I could just make it in New York, I can make it. Well, then how about I spent almost 2 decades making it in New York and then I live in another dream city and they're like, "Aren't you done dreaming? You're over 40. Like, you should situate." You should really LA is so expensive. I begin to hear all the things, all the reasons why LA would not be the right choice. And those things and without any question of, "Hey, did you consult with God? Is this a what is this?" Instead, I heard from some friends lots of opposition. Like, I what are your kids gonna feel? How's are you sure? Is your marriage gonna make it? What is it gonna look like?
Mhm.
So there's all of those different things that people some people who are friends would do to not they don't mean to impose doubt, but they impose their own fears, their own doubts onto my decision making. And I've had to go, well, wait, now that tells me you can't be as close as I thought you could be because I don't have room for doubt and opposition in this season. I have room for critical thinking, but I don't have room for doubt. Right. And so the long answer was that, but the short is absolutely yes.
So when you are evaluating, auditing daily, as you said,
Daily.
daily, are you looking for or evaluating the change that's happening on the outside? So those that are, whether they're naysayers or not, or are you first looking inwardly and understanding in you what's shifting?
Mhm.
Yes. So I wanna actually also say I have hands down the most amazing friends in the entire world. No one has better friends than me. No one. I stand beside it. I stand and I say that because with every friend I have, I gain such another new friend. I gain another new relationship. And it's so like this, I have this really beautiful bloom of friendships, all types of friends. Some have never met, but they all like are just so meaningful and valuable to me. So I'm a person that gathers a lot of people because if I know you and I love you, I think of you and I consider you and you become a part of my village and my heart and my mind. So I have this beautiful bloom, right? But then every day has a new demand. And with every day and every demand that comes with the day, I have to make choices about what belonging looks like and who fits that criteria, right? And so there are seasons where one of my absolute favorite friends, and I talk every day because in that season, we have the time, it fits our needs, it fits our
Mhm.
goals, it supports what our outcomes are, and we wanna have that space, right? Then there are seasons where we talk twice a month, maybe because she's traveling for work or I'm traveling for work or I have, really busy teenagers and we live in different time zones. And so it's not that we don't have the same sense of belonging, but the amount of dedicated time that we can put into the relationship is different. It doesn't mean that the
Right.
relationship, the quality of the relationship changes, but the input and output has to change because it is just the season of change. And
So is that
so
part of your criteria of evaluation in the sense of this season, this is what is happening and what I need in terms
Mhm.
of those relationships, and so let me evaluate based on this criteria.
yeah, so for every person, you have to ask yourself, what do I need in this season? And how can I show up in this season? Because it's selfish to walk into a relationship only thinking about your need. I think it's also valuable if you want to give people what they deserve from you. It's a fair question to say, how am I showing up in this season? How am I able to show up? And if I'm not able to show up with what I know this person values the most, one of their beautiful love languages is it, I have a friend who is deep into quality time. She wants to sit on the phone for hours every time. And if I tell her I have 15, she's like, well, call me when you got an hour. So I can't call her until I have an hour. She wants the
Right,
hour. She
right,
wants to leave space for whatever's going to happen in that
right.
hour. And I'm on bullets and she's not. So I have to, okay, Sybil, part that hour, make sure you dedicate that hour because she needs the hour and she makes it clear. And I give her, and when we get on for that hour, it's the best hour that we both needed because she's giving me also what I needed out of the relationship as well. So how am I able to show up in this relationship as well as what do I need from this relationship?
So I appreciate you having the audit moments and the recognition. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has that
Right.
sense of awareness. And so what I'm interested in is when there is, whether it's time, space, or whatever, you're more aligned with someone and then something shifts.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to spend some time talking about the shift. And so like when a shift occurs, do you do you feel it? Like what makes you realize that this relationship that was moving in this direction is suddenly moving in a different direction or maybe far apart or whatever it is, but what happens? Do you feel it? Do you notice the change? Can you talk us through that?
Yes, I can. And I think we all feel and notice the change if we are truly in tune to one another, attuned to feeling and emotion and connection with a person. We all feel the change, but we may not always honor what we're feeling. We may
Mhm.
just, maybe we want to avoid it. We're not ready to deal with it. Maybe we don't want to be the one to approach the conversation first. But and maybe we've also learned that we've run out of things to say because one of us has bigger or different questions or different views or values or different curiosities than the other. And we're not meeting each other in the middle anymore. And then there's also times where you really do realize that you are taking up someone else's space. Someone else deserves their proximity. Someone else can love them better. Have you ever had an ex where you said somebody can love him better than this is not my person. I'm a person. That's somebody's good husband, but that's not my person. Because there are people that are meant to be humans for one another. And so you sometimes you get to the place, excuse me, where you realize I'm taking up someone else's space. Someone
Mm,
else is supposed to play this role. I am out of character right now because it takes me more effort and it should come more naturally than it's coming. And so if it's taking more effort, if it's you pushing and nudging and fussing to try to make something happen that used to be organic, you have to recognize that you are really out of your role and there's another cast that's lining up, but you're standing in someone else's spot.
mm,
Do you ever find that when you're feeling that, whether that someone else can play that role, I'm taking up space, whereby it's you didn't feel it, but that other person in the friendship did, and how did that come about, if that has ever happened? How did
Yes.
you feel?
Oh my gosh, the amount of rejection I felt, Michelle, like, ooh, child. So, as I mentioned, I'm a gatherer, and once I put you in my life, you in there, and I mean, and you have got to do something so I don't even know what you have to do for me to tell me to eliminate you or say, "You
Right.
know what? I can I My forgiveness runs deep and long," and I'm also a person who, I understand that people make bad choices in relationships, and so I'm able to kind of move people as I need. Well, I mean, we're not gonna spend as much time in this season because I need her to get that right before we can hang again. Or, I tend to make a lot of space and give a lot of time, more than I should. Now that I'm deeper into my 40s, I have a lot less tolerance for the things that I once tolerated very generously. And it was because I realized how quickly I was removed from a person's life for a very small mistake I felt like it was unfair to me. And so I left kicking and screaming
Mhm.
because I also in my life, I was like, I would like to have the final say here. And I feel like this is not the right time for this relationship to go the way that it should. But I had to also I didn't didn't consult God with that. It was just my feelings were saying to me, this is unfair. And I feel like I was not treated the way I should. And how dare you try to replace me? Who could be better than me? So then I'm peeking in the window going, who's the new friend and what are y'all up to? So inappropriate, but that was my mindset because I had not matured around departures. I had
Mhm.
not grown in that space yet. I hadn't practiced it well enough, and I also, as a gatherer, I just never wanna be let go of, nor do I wanna let people go. So dealing with
Yeah.
that rejection, dealing with the idea that someone thinks you're not good enough to fit in their circle, that's another feeling that comes up, or dealing with the idea that you have FOMO, you're just missing out on what you pictured the relationship being. And people will often say it happens most in romantic relationships, but I do believe it happens more in friendships than
Mhm.
it does with a romantic partner. You picture your
Yeah.
friends being friends forever,
Mhm. Right.
right? And
Yeah.
romantic partners, most women will or people will go, well, romantic partners come and go, but friends last a lifetime. And then the more mature you get, you go season, lifetime, reason because you
Yeah.
recognize
Yeah.
that hypothesis is not true. Friends are not always a lifetime. They're more seasonal. The more you grow, you realize they're actually more seasonal than they are lifetime.
So I'm interested in the departure. When that happens, when it has happened, is it with a conversation or is it just the ships are just sailing apart?
Yeah. I think it's yes and, right? Because there are people in your life who who are really great at communicating in the good times, but when there's conflict, they avoid. They run, they go, and that avoidance oftentimes equals departure. Because I do
Mhm.
believe that in great relationships, we're deserving of closure. Like we're deserving of conversation. And in my rule book, in my relationship rule book, if you love me, you offer me resolution. That's part of my rule book. I have been friends with people who could care less about resolution. They care more about departure, right? So because we have different rule books, different operating procedures in friendship, that table never happens, right? And then you
Mhm.
have to come up with your own piece. You have to reconcile for yourself what the relationship was or what it turned into and how you're going to handle your feelings around it. Because though I may feel I'm deserving of it, someone the friend or the exiting friend may not feel that they are capable of having that conversation. And that's got to be okay. It's got to be
Mhm.
okay because we're all adults. That means it's room for me to grow, and that means that there's room for that person to learn. But there are
Mhm.
so many times, I think most times in conflict, people are avoidant and they'd rather just sweep it under the rug and keep
Mhm.
it from moving. And but I think that in loving relationships, if you really do take the time, maybe it's not a verbal communication, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a text, maybe you find a way to communicate feeling and create closure. But I think that in loving relationships, you find a way, like seek the way
Mhm,
to do it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, in if so, what has happened in reverse? Meaning, if you then have realized that this this is we're not in that season any longer, friend, and you, however you've shared that with that person, how have you had experiences where this friend now just really doesn't accept the new you? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I haven't had a place where a person hasn't been a well, you know what, Michelle? I probably haven't checked to see if a person had a problem with the new because once I move forward, I'm not asking permission. I'm not, I'm not doing surveys. I'm in my zone. Uh, and you have to, and if you meet me there, great. If you don't meet me there, I realize that your last lap was that last one. So
Mhm.
I've not had the space where I've had to have that, but I have had the space where I've had the conversation with a friend about um, you know, s- changes in the relationship. And what I got was a line that I have used over and over again. It's funny because I used it on a podcast and another friend came to me with it and that she used it in a relationship. And the line was this. I came to the table with this friend and the conversation was just about things have changed. I asked that my friends honor my name publicly and privately. Like I just let my name be good in your mouth in your conversation. Find a ways to honor my name. And this person did not. And it was brought to my attention and she owned it. And I said to her, "Well, we don't agree with how I should be treated. We agree with how you should be treated because you're happy with the way I treat you, but I'm not happy with the way you treat me. So we don't agree
Mm.
with how I should be treated." And she was like, "But we do." I said, "We don't if you can't respect my name and I ask you to be gentle with my name. Simple. And I'm gentle with yours. But if that is a thing that we can't honor, then we don't agree with how I should be treated." Because I have the issue. She didn't have an issue with the relationship. It was
Okay.
me. And for that reason, I told her, I was like, "You're probably gonna hear from me less. Definitely gonna be less coffee. And, I'm definitely gonna we're not gonna be as close. It's gonna happen.
Right.
It's gonna happen. Yeah.
Wow.
But I
Well, I
think
mean,
that's important.
well, first of all, that's a very mature way to go about it, right? And so I really appreciate you giving a perspective as to when there is that misalignment with how someone treats your name, one, having the conversation and being clear, right? Rather than, ghosting them, as they say, and just being clear, "Look, this is the action I'm taking and this is why." Um,
Yeah.
but I'd love to talk. So now we're talking about, we've been talking about the one-on-one relationships, but sometimes there are spaces that you're in. And so you're in, particularly, it could be a group setting. And so when we think about, and refer to it as like a room, you're in this
Mhm.
room. Um, how do you know when you've outgrown a room and it's time to move on?
Oh my goodness, that is such a great question. And I think that we all hit those moments. For me, I recognize that I've outgrown a room when I am the thought leader in the room and I have no one to look up to or no blueprints to gain from. When I realize all the questions are coming to me and I don't have any questions to point outward, I realize that I've outgrown a room because we should never. And I've always been taught by my parents, my mentors, and everyone, you should never be the smartest person in the room. You should always be stimulated and curious and eager to discover new things in a quote unquote room. But when you are in a room and you realize that you are void of discovery or void of curiosity, or that you're void of new blueprints or new things that will help you to grow or feel safe or feel strong or feel more capable, I think you realize you're in the market for a new room.
Hmm.
And are there moments when you've, even though you've seen that you have outgrown the room, that you've decided to stay regardless? And what has been the reasoning behind that? And also, how long do you stay?
Yes, Michelle, I have. I'm like, I'm so
You
ashamed.
said that
I
so,
regret
like, shameful.
I have because every time I've done that, it's because the room felt safe.
Mm,
Mm,
And
okay.
when the room felt just when it was just about safety, that meant the room was comfortable. So
right.
I had to acknowledge those times when I was afraid to leave a room. And I ended up getting removed or left out of a room because at that point, I'm no longer adding value to the space that other people need. So I have to honor those times and say, yes, there have been many times because I, again, love to keep people close, and I love to keep, I love to have a safe nucleus.
Mhm.
Safety was definitely a number one factor for me in friendship. Do I feel safe? And if I feel safe, then I felt like that was good enough. But it's not
Right.
always good enough to feed growth and to feed ambition. So that safety sometimes meant that I was getting comfortable for too long. And I realized the difference when I had dreams that were feeling unfulfilled. I had questions that weren't getting answered. I felt like I didn't have the resources that I needed to move in the direction that I wanted to go in. I knew that I had situated myself too safely, too comfortably in spaces that I had outgrown every
Mm,
time. Never the
mm,
people, always me, always me.
Well, I'm glad you said that because yeah, that's such a good point to make in the sense of you might be in those groups. And so you, as you said, maybe you did stay a little bit longer because you felt safe, you felt comfortable, but I like that you acknowledge that you changed. You
mhm.
know you've changed and
Yeah,
you felt that and you knew that, but you stayed a little bit longer for the safety. But I think what's most important is knowing who you are and knowing that it's no one else changed in this group. It's you who has
yeah,
changed and you felt for whatever the reasons are, you've outgrown that.
mhm,
So
yeah.
just
I
one
will
yeah.
say the largest room example of that is it took 3 years to move to LA from New York. I was so afraid because I was so safe and so comfortable on the
Mhm.
East Coast. I mean, look at the girlfriends on the East Coast. I mean, the East Coast it just felt so good and it felt so rich. And I was like, well, God has met me here. Is God gonna meet me on the West Coast? What's the West like? Will life be as good or will I feel as safe as I felt on the East
Mhm.
Coast? And so that is absolutely the strongest and greatest, most recent example for me was moving and questioning whether or not I would have a sense of belonging on the West Coast.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
and that really speaks to the importance of community.
Yeah.
And you use that word belonging. And so when you make the decision, whether for you it's to move to the West Coast or you know that you've outgrown a friendship, a group, or whatever the case may be, how do you one find that new community? How
Mhm.
have you done that? So I'll ask was LA for you a completely new community where you had to start over for the
Mhm.
most part? So how did because you know that importance of belonging, how did you come into finding that community to belong?
Oh my gosh, another great question because I, like many people after 2020, was in a new city. And lots of people moved or either found that quality of life was different, their needs were different. But what always travels with you, no matter where you go, your interests, your thought leadership, your character, your passions all go with you. And so I think the number one thing that I've been able to do, one, I will tell you, for the people who have said LA has, LA is so pretentious and so maybe it is. That is not my experience. LA is so
Mhm.
loving. I have great girlfriends and great guy friends and family friends here. The community has been so generous and warm and embracing to my family, each one of us, and then collectively. But it's not because we came in looking for people to fill voids. We came in giving of ourselves, giving of our character, giving of our passion, giving of our interest. We love our church community in New York. So when we came here, we immediately found our church community. And within that community, I was able to recognize other women who I identified or related with character wise, because you're able to observe character in action. You can see who people
Mhm.
are by how they move. So for me, in our school community, other moms, I was able to locate other moms in our school community who I related to because I was able to see their character and their passion in motion, in our school community. And then also I have a lot of girlfriends who had moved out here moons ago. And I thought we would be the closest. I said, oh my gosh, we already got deep pocket friends, like the ones we're going to get out here. We're going to do this thing. We barely see each other twice a year. No love lost, no interest lost. They were not meant to be the ones that I spent the most time with, and they also made me very comfortable, right? So,
Mhm.
I felt like my comfort was being disrupted, and, I also feel like it's super important for myself and anyone who is looking for a community. You can even be in your current city. Maybe you're not moving. Maybe you just feel dry. Maybe you feel like I don't have what Cecilia, pardon. I don't have what Cecilia has. I don't have what Michelle has. Like, I don't have that that depth, that richness. Or I see women who are connected, but I don't feel like I have that in my life. Then
Mhm.
you need to dive deeper into your passion, dive deeper into the issues that you want to solve in the world. Wherever you want to solve an issue, if women in leadership is your issue, you want to help, move the needle on getting women in leadership, or maybe it's politics, or maybe, it's economics of some sort, whatever it might be. Dive deeper into your passion and dive deeper into the problems that you want to solve in the world, because your people are there.
Mm.
That's where they are. And that's where you'll feel your fit, and that's where you'll never feel like you have to look further. You'll always locate your people there.
So, Sybil, you've done a great job of talking about these junctures where, whether it's going from college to being married, being a mom, moving, and it sounds like you find your people, but but I also know there's times and would love to hear if you had that experience where in that growth, in that new space, there's some isolation. So
Oof.
until the people come, there's a moment of maybe loneliness. And
Mhm.
so what are some of the myths that people think and believe about that isolation loneliness season?
I think the number one myth that people one, I'll say I've had that, and I have it at high frequency, because being an entrepreneur, you'll oftentimes find yourself on a boat looking for other boats. Where's there another yacht? Because I need to get off this canoe. Is there help? Is anyone coming? So I feel like as an entrepreneur, you're always looking to make sure that you're orbiting properly in relationships.
Mhm.
But I think the number one myth that people may live with or sit with is that it will last, that it's going to be the way it's going to be, and that you need to have, that's number one. One, that it's going to last, that the duration is going to be eternal. That is not true. We are a human ecosystem. We are meant to bind together. Think about this. How fascinating is that we're all breathing the same air, but we are thousands of miles apart. We're meant to be together. Your people are connected to you, whether you get close to them or not is on you. But we are all meant to be a part of one ecosystem. So God will never leave you without people long. He will isolate you so he can get to you, so he can talk to
Mhm.
you, so he can refine you, so that you're not so dependent on people. But he will isolate you for that purpose, but it's not so that you feel like you'll never have, and it will always be. And the other thing is that you have to be better to be the person for someone else. Like, you got to be a greater, better, deeper, richer. You are great enough just like you are. Just like you are. Your teeth not brushed, you're in the bed with your onesie on, whatever you got, your moo moo, mocktail cocktail, whatever it is, You are great enough now for great girlfriends and friendship and guy friends and community. You're great enough now. You don't need to gloss up to belong in relationship.
Mhm.
That is not a real relationship where you have to pretty up and fancy up and level up so that you can be a friend. That is not it. And so I think a lot of times we think we don't belong because we look at what people have on the outside or how they look, and we're like, my gosh, she must have different criteria for friends than what I have. Everyone is looking for heart companions. Everyone is looking for people that can stimulate their minds. Everyone's looking for people they can be creative with. So you're great enough like you are. It's not going to last forever. And you're not isolated because you're not good enough. You're isolated because God is refining you to get you in a space where you can stand and realize isolation is not loneliness. You can be alone so that you can go with God for a period. And then when people come in your life, you value them differently. You don't depend on them.
I I I do think though that when you are in those valleys and you have that solitude, it's very difficult for some to have that upbeat, have that
That's right.
positive
Mhm.
thought of it's not for a lifetime, it's only for a moment. And those thoughts may come for a week, but then next week, next month, when you're still in the valley, you can use that as reinforcement that yes, this is for a lifetime. So not I don't know if you have ever experienced that whereby you have felt at any moment in time where you did not necessarily think you were there for just a moment of time. But even if you were, what has been some things that have helped you to or during
Mhm.
those moments of solitude for you to be where you are now being shaped? Where
Yeah.
what has been revealed about you to yourself because of that?
Mm. Oh, Michelle. So I will say in 2023, in LA, I felt so lonely. It was the most bizarre feeling. I was not void of friends. I wasn't void of phone calls. People were asking me to go places and do all the things, and my New York people wanted to hang, and friends from all. It was I was never. It was never because people were not in my life. It was because I was not being friendly to myself. I was being so hard on myself. And I was talking to myself in my low points lower. So if there was a hole, I was digging it deeper. I was agreeing with all the negative thoughts, like, yeah, this is life is hard. These are these friends real? Are these LA? Do these LA girls really want to hang? Or are they trying to get something? What is, I started questioning, why are the people calling? What do they want? And I was tired and I was fatigued and I was not honest that I was not being good to myself. I was being very unkind to myself. And again, agreeing with the negativity. Yes, we all have the isolation and the low periods, and mine actually lasted a long time. What I learned in therapy was that that low period was the fruit of me not really dealing deeply with the grief of my father in 2020. And
Mhm.
it just ran over and over and over. And until I really dealt with the issue of what my heart was feeling, I wasn't able to be liberal with connection with other people, nor with myself. So a lot
Mhm.
of times we are in those valleys and we just dig ourselves deeper because we agree with the doubt. We agree with the
Right,
pain. We feel like
right.
we've earned that spot. I disagree with that. I don't think we've earned
Mhm.
that spot. I know we end up in those spots, but it's not because we earned it. Sometimes we need to stop and assess our decisions. We need to stop and assess our relationships. Do a heart check. Are you
Yeah.
loving you? Would you want to go to dinner with you? Or would
Mhm.
you want to go to the woods? Are you showing up as the best person for you? Are you supporting yourself?
Yeah.
And then if you are, you're a really great candidate for companionship. Right? And sometimes even in those isolated spots, you realize that people are waiting to love you out of it, but if you don't reach out and connect with a lifeline. I didn't have to, you know what? Maybe the LA girls weren't authentic. I didn't have to measure that in that point. That wasn't even a question on the table. What I could do was phone a real friend, somebody that's a certified, verified friend, and go, hey, I'm in a valley over here. And let that person help to resurrect me or restore me. Instead of questioning what's not, I could lean into what is. So When we're in those spaces, it's because we're looking forward and it feels like forward is so far away. Stop that. Stop looking forward. Reach into the relationships that are so rich and have proven themselves loving and faithful to you and say, hey, I'm in need of a lifeline right now. And while you're
Mm,
doing that, check in with yourself. Girl, how have you been to yourself?
yeah.
Honestly, like, honestly, what are the secrets you're holding? What is the stuff that you don't want anyone to know that you're thinking late at night, that you're percolating over, that you need to release so that your heart can be free? What are those things? And I found my way out through self-awareness, self-examination, and plugging in where I already had an outlet, right? So I think
Mm.
sometimes we want to bring in so much more. We want more people. Everybody wants to be friends with Beyonce. I want the great Michelle Obama. We could be great friends, right? Love that for you. How are you doing with what you have? Right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so, you know what? What I appreciate this bridge or the bookends, right? It's looking at the friendship audit, but it's also having that audit of yourself,
Yeah.
right? And so how
First,
how how are you showing up first? I appreciate that.
yeah,
So, well, this was
yeah.
really rich. And so we have a couple, speaking of bookends. And so our pour in the beginning is one of our bookends. And then the other one is where we ask our guests. So I'm going to ask you to pause and reflect on this particular chapter in your life right now without professional or personal titles. If you were to introduce yourself, what 3 words would you use? Hi, I'm Sybil, and I'm.
Oh my goodness. Hi, I'm Sybil, and I'm free. I'm light, and I'm love.
Okay,
Those three.
civil
Those
free.
are for today. For
Yeah,
today.
no,
For today.
and that's fine. It
Yeah, and they
ships.
should be.
It ships, and that's okay. Free light and love is I
Yeah.
love that for you, and strive
Yeah.
to meet you there. So, civil,
You have
thank
brought me
you.
here. Your love has brought me here. You are a beat in my heart. You know this. Like you are the color you're wearing.
Well, I appreciate being part of your bloom, part of your gather. I don't want to be a leaf that falls off. I want to be the branch. I want to be there. So
Way to go with the
the
flower
flower.
plant reference.
I'm just going with it. I'm just going with it.
It's
But
totally it. It's totally it. Yeah.
But no, thank you very much, Sybil, for joining us. Again, thank you for really revealing a few things about yourself and your own journey into or daily journey into an
Mhm.
audit. And leaving our listeners with something to think about around that as well. Not just let me audit and think about the friendships, relationships that I currently have and what they are offering me, but more of, again, that introspective as to what am I offering
Mhm.
them? And also, am I happy with myself? I mean, your example of, do I want to go to the movies with myself? Do I want to go to dinner with myself? Because if
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else will. So thank you for even just keeping it in that simplicity is so very helpful.
Yeah.
It's my
Thank
pleasure. I
you.
appreciate this platform that you ladies have developed, and I'm so excited for you. And I just wish you all the best in this. Welcome to the podcast community. You belong here. And there's so many places that people that need what you have. So congratulations to you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sybil.
Cheers, Sybil.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, my love. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us on the After Chapter podcast.
Like, follow, subscribe, and share. Until next time, pause,
take
take a sip,
and
stay with what's unfolding.
Oh, one more thing. Here comes the legal part. Our lawyers will be really happy we said this. The After Chapter podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are 2 women pouring into this conversation with you. We are not licensed therapists, and nothing you hear on this show is intended to replace the advice of a physician, therapist, professional coach, or any other qualified professional. If you're in a season that calls for deeper support, please reach out to a professional and know that reaching out is one of the bravest things you can do.